Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I always want to honor where I get my ideas if I remember. As I get older, sometimes my resources are way back there, but last night I remembered where I got the kernel of the idea for today's talk, and it was somebody I started reading in my 20s. So you can imagine that's been a while ago. But this is the funny part about this. It was the one person, every time I shared their books, my friends would say, that makes no sense to me. So all I can hope is I'm translating it today enough it makes sense to you. And the book itself was called The Fourth Way. And it was written by a mathematician. Now, of course, many of you know that's my background, so I guess that was part of why it made sense to me. But he was writing about the philosophy and teachings of George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who was a Russian that started schools of spiritual seeking about 1912. And he continued teaching, and there's still schools of his philosophy. And this was the fourth way says this: there's 3 known ways to reach an understanding of God. The faker, and I don't mean somebody who's not being authentic and is faking it. I mean the Sufi who will go to the extremes of such holding back from self to almost hurt the body, maybe through fasting for long periods of time. You know them as twirling to also the movement. And he said the monk would have more of the emotional approach of knowing oneness with God, and the yogi, who was more the mental, and at the same time tried to teach that those linked the body with the mind. Now, the fourth way is right where you are, doing just what you're doing. So that's how most of us seek God. Right where we're at, doing just what we're doing. And through our life, we begin to have a closer understanding of God. So that's where I got this idea, because somewhere in his teachings, he talked about most human beings being almost mechanical, in the sense that they had programmed themselves by what they believed to be true and by the pattern they had lived, to where they almost didn't have any choice. When certain things happened, they were triggered and they reacted in the same way. So he said, you can move from being the mechanical man to having more freedom if you begin to realize that really you're a committee of people. So when I ask you, who is me? You have to think about it. Which me are you right now? And I know some of your moods that might change you into being more outspoken, more gregarious, more kind and loving with people, and the one that's kind of more introverted and is in their head ruminating about an issue or a problem. Or it might be that you have a me that has to, from time to time, just be alone. So which me did you bring in this morning? Now here's the other part of it. Don't most committees have a chairperson? I can tell you from working with my co-leader, the senior minister here, that he served as the chairperson, and he knew how to make sure there was an agenda. You just didn't go any place and every place in a meeting. You had an agenda. And he knew how to make sure everybody on the committee was heard, but nobody took the stage and wouldn't get off. He controlled the gavel. So I'm saying to you that perhaps there is a chairperson of your committee of me. So it seems like a simple question, but if you really think about it, I want to suggest to you that you really don't develop that one self until you get down deep to what the Hindus call the Atman, the individual soul that is unchanging. And when you do that, you have a chairperson. You have someone that knows the agenda, knows who you came here to be, knows the you that is the authentic you. Here's the truth. By the time most of us show up here today, we do walk in as a committee. I'll just tell you a few people at the table. There's the adverse ego, because that's what Charles Fillmore called the ego that wasn't grown up yet, and sometimes acted out like a youth can or an adolescent can. That's the me that's quick to defend their position, quick to compare, quick to decide the world's against him or her. She's the one that needs to be right, and she keeps score. She's not evil. She's just scared. And she thinks armor is the same thing as safety. So that's our adverse ego. I don't know about you, but I sit at the table sometimes as the adverse ego. Then there's the vulnerable me, tender, easily hurt, the one who remembers every slight and carries it perhaps a little too long. Now, she's not weak. She's honest. She's telling you how she feels. She's the part of us that's still willing to feel things all the way through, even when it costs her. I've been that me at the table. There's the me that's committed to spiritual growth. That's me. The one who shows up here on Sunday. If you're in a class, you've read the book, you try to do the practice, you try to live those 5 principles, and you genuinely want to mature. She's sincere, she's trying, but she's tired because sometimes she's making too much effort. And underneath, or maybe through all 3 of these, there is the true me, the spiritual being, the Atman. Not becoming spiritual, being spiritual. Already, right now, and this is the part that matters. And that's the truth. Now, the last piece is everything. The true me isn't a 4th voice. She's not the one on the committee competing for the floor with the other 3. She's the awareness. She's the Atman underneath the whole meeting. The one who can watch the adverse ego get defensive, and the vulnerable me get hurt, and the growth-committed me get tired, and simply know without argument, I am still whole beneath all these different me's. I am whole. Now, if you think about it, there's some truth to that metaphor of us being a committee. And if we're going to keep this metaphor, I think it's a useful one. Let me ask the obvious follow-up question. Who are you going to let be the chairperson? Someone who doesn't necessarily do all the talking, but holds the gavel? Who calls the meeting to order? Who decides ultimately which voice gets the floor? Who's chairing your committee? Because most of us never actually ask. We assume the loudest voice in the room is in charge. So that's the adverse ego. And adverse ego took the gavel by default, simply because she shouted first and loud. Or maybe you let the vulnerable me be your chairperson, running things from the back corner for years. Nobody elected her. Now here's the new thought answer, plain and simple. The true me, the Atman, my soul, is the rightful chairman. the consciousness, the observer that sees all of it. Do you ever wake up and see yourself and go, oh my God, what's coming out of my mouth right now? What state am I in right now? What state of consciousness is this? What's wrong with me? And you're standing in front of somebody and they're wondering what's going through you as you look like you're having an electric shock run through you. So the chairperson doesn't rule by force. It doesn't even win by vote. By right of being the only one in the room who was there before the committee was even formed and who will be there after every other voice has said its piece, she doesn't need to shout to preside. She needs to be remembered as the one holding the gavel. Just remember who you came here to be. So the freedom that we've talked about all month is in the choosing. You get to choose. Now here, I want to say something that could surprise you. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you the adverse ego is the enemy. I'm not going to tell you the vulnerable me is a problem to fix. The actual New Thought teaching underneath all of this is we're free to be any and all of those me's. That's not a flaw in the design. That is the design. And that's what freedom means. We're free to choose who we be. Which me are you going to be, and which me are you going to let chair the committee? Freedom was never the absence of ego. Charles Fillmore said that all the time. You can't operate in this world without an ego. Just try to make it a healthy one. Just try to remember that you do have a brother and sister that also has priorities and thoughts and feelings and beliefs. You're not the only one in the room. So freedom is in any given moment. Right now, we get to choose. We can meet a hard conversation as the adverse ego, armored and ready to win if we choose. We can meet it as the vulnerable me, open, a little exposed. We can meet it as the me still practicing, still trying to remember the principles before reacting. Or we can meet it as the true me, the authentic me, the one who doesn't need to win, doesn't need to protect, doesn't need to try, because she knows what she is. All four are available to us, and there's many on the committee I didn't mention, all the time. But it's not a burden that they're all present. That's the freedom itself. Therein lies our freedom, not in eliminating all the other me's, but in the moment-to-moment, daily life, choosing which one gets to speak and who's holding the gavel while she does. You don't have to permanently silence the adverse ego to be free. You just have to remember who's chairing the meeting when she stands up to talk. A good chairman doesn't throw committee members out of the room. Now, I've been in committees, we've been tempted to throw some out of the room. But a good chairman doesn't throw them out of the room. She simply doesn't let any one voice run the whole agenda. Now, you may already know this, but it's a gradual process to grow up, to manage all your many me's. But we gradually, willingly surrender to our true self. When do we feel the best? When we're being authentically who we are. I mean, speaking for myself, I know that's true. So why would we ever choose anything other than being the authentic, true soul? Because we're human. And our old habits are loud. And the adverse ego has had a lot of practice and doesn't want to give up being the chairperson. Now, this isn't a talk about getting it right immediately, because we don't. It's a talk about a gradual surrender It's not a demand, not a deadline. I just ask you to begin to know yourself better. Have a deeper understanding of who you did come here to be. Now, we in Unity believe we came here to be an expression of the divine. And we all have such diversity that we express it in so many different ways. Some people are so hilarious that you feel joy just being around them. I have a son like that. Some are more serious, and they will from time to time want to give you little words of wisdom. But you appreciate them because they're done not as a, I'm smarter than you, but just part of the conversation. So I want you to pay attention this coming week and realize, yes, you can be any me you want to be, but do some of those me's actually have a cost? When the adverse ego runs the moment, you might win the argument, but you feel strangely empty about an hour later. When the vulnerable me runs unchecked, you might feel deeply honestly, and also then you find yourself back in that same wound you visited 100 times. Even the growth-committed me, sincere as she is, can leave you exhausted because she's striving towards something she hasn't just let herself be. Only one of those, your authentic self, is not in a tug-of-war with anything. Not fighting the adverse ego, not soothing the vulnerable me, not straining toward growth, just being, the spiritual being you were always meant to be, and knowing it. So it's important that we have a gradual surrender, not because the others are bad, but because we begin to realize it's only the authentic self that's truly free. We impose a lot of our own pain because of that ongoing tug-of-war between who we're afraid we are, who we wish we were, and who we're trying to become. The tug-of-war ends the moment we remember there was never anything to pull toward. We're already standing on solid ground. Now, there's an old line that everybody knows: I will know the truth, and the truth will set me free. Now, I want to sit with that phrase for a moment because I think we rush past it. Now, it doesn't say the truth will arrive and set you free. It says, I am free when I know the truth. The knowing is the work. We speak truth in Unity. Matter of fact, the old days, they used to call Unity people truth seekers, or they would be students of the truth, because that's what we're seeking, the truth. And the truth is, you already are a spiritual being, whole and complete. It's never gone anywhere. It's not waiting to be earned. It's waiting to be recognized, to be realized, to be made real. Once you begin to know authentically who you are, you just live it. You've made it real. You've realized the truth. And it sets you free. So when the adverse ego rises up in a meeting, the practice isn't to shame her into silence. It's to gently ask, is this the me I choose to be right now? When the vulnerable me is aching over something someone said, the practice isn't to override her either. It's to hold her with the same tenderness that the true me holds everyone, including you. And when the growth-committed me feels like she's still not there yet, the practice is to remind her, you were never really trying to get somewhere else. You were just trying to remember something you already are. And that's the surrender. Not a collapse, not a defeat, a gradual willing return moment to moment to the one self who was never in the fight to begin with, the self that is mortal and knows it and always has been. It waits for our realization, our knowing it. So here's something to carry home with you today. This week, when you notice tension rising, a defensive edge, a hurt feeling, a striving to prove you're growing enough, pause and simply name which me's picked up the wheel. Not with judgment, just with clarity. Ah, that's the adverse ego. Oh, that's the vulnerable me. Often naming the one of you that keeps popping up is enough to make her lose the grip. Then take a deep breath and offer yourself this: I will know the truth, and it will set me free. So say it again with me. I will know the truth, and it will set me free. One more time. I will know the truth, and it will set me free. Not someday, not once I've earned it, now. In this exact moment of choosing, when you remember the truth of who you are, and the tug of war simply has nowhere left to pull. So who is me? She's the one who defends, she's the one who feels too much, she's the one still practicing, and she's the one underneath all three, who is always whole, always spiritual, always free, and simply needs to remember it. We're free to be any of them. That's the gift. But gradually, gently, we surrender to the one who was never at war, because she's the only one who was ever truly free. I will know the truth, and it will set me free. And so it is.